Hello and welcome back to Acorn Hobbies. My name is Camden, and today I am bringing you two big things that will matter for you this week. This is how to survive a big convention, and also my personal predictions for what the GenCon meta will look like. I think there's some spicy decks out there, so we're going to hop into what that could look like. But first, let's take a moment and talk about how to survive a big convention. I am going to Gen Con for the first time this year, but I've been to PAX Unplugged. I was at Adepticon earlier this year, and I've been to FFG Worlds a few different times, as well as other conventions that are unrelated to gaming. But I think there are a few key things that you need to know before you go into this time of hectic, crazy, fun awesomeness. It is a long, long, long day, but it can be a really good one if you handle it well. So, these are the three H's of con safety, of con health, of con happiness. It is hydration, health, and happiness. These are the three things that you need to keep an eye on while you are at a convention. And it seems pretty straightforward, honestly, but these are things that are really easy to forget if you don't think about them up front. So before you pack your bags, before you hit your flight tomorrow morning, then you better make sure that these are the things that you are paying attention to. So the first one is hydration. This is a big one. I think it's number one on my list for a reason. Bring a water bottle. Having good water makes all the difference. Oftentimes, when you're getting a headache, it's because you are dehydrated. These things, you're talking a lot to your opponents. Maybe you're playing, maybe you're taking a demo and having to ask questions, or maybe you're just walking around the show floor for a long, long time. That is more than enough reason to need good hydration. So bring a water bottle. And don't forget to refill it. You've got to refill your water bottle constantly. You want to make sure that thing is ready before you enter a match. That way, then you're not thrown off by it being empty. While I was playing at Adepticon earlier this year, I was playing Shatterpoint, and those games can be, an hour and a half, 2 hours with setup and all that stuff. And if your water bottle isn't full, that can be a long time to go without water, especially as you're talking with your opponent. Thankfully, unlimited games are a little bit quicker, but they can still be about an hour with all that time. And you want to make sure that your water bottle is good to go. And then finally, keep your sodas and energy drinks and juices to a minimum. The more sugar that you have, the more likely you're going to crash, and that's going to throw off your whole game plan. If you're planning on playing competitively, then you want to be drinking a lot of water and eating healthy. Sodas with sugar and caffeine, they might be a temporary fix, but they ultimately will not give you the most health for your games, for your matches. And if you're looking to do well, that can make all the difference, allowing you to think clearer and be more focused in the middle of a match. But at the same time, if you're not looking to play competitively, then just make sure that you are drinking plenty of water. It makes your con experience that much more fun. The second thing that really matters is your health. Get a proper amount of sleep each night. I know it's going to be so tempting to stay up until 2 in the morning and then, get half an hour of sleep before you go wait in some con line for some exclusive thing. Thankfully, the convention exclusives for Unlimited are not that. They're doing the tickets at 9 a.m., so that is exciting, but make sure that you get a proper amount of sleep. You want to make sure that you are sleeping a lot. The less sleep you have, the more cranky you're going to be, the less likely you're going to be able to focus, and that can just make for a really fun day out the window. It can be a really, really frustrating day without good sleep. The second thing is eating relatively healthy. It's not always going to be the easiest thing in the world to do that because we all know how con food can be. There's never anything that's too healthy. But packing protein bars, maybe bringing some fruit, doing what you can when you're not at the hall, that can be a big way to help your health. It sounds so simple, but especially in the time leading up to a con, you want to make sure that you're eating, relatively healthy. Prepare your body. If you are throwing your body off for the few days and you're not eating enough, or you're eating too much, or you're eating different food while you're there, it can throw off your whole body and it can just really take it poorly. So eat relatively healthy. And then finally, take precautions when you're playing for long periods. If you feel that you're getting a headache coming on, get that water bottle. If you take some ibuprofen or something like that, that can be a good way to help curb some of that, disappointment that comes with feeling rough. Also, when you're playing for long, long periods and you know that you get tired, maybe during the lunch break, you try and grab a quick power nap. Maybe you try and do something that is more relaxing. If your social battery is, flying out the window, then maybe take some time to just walk around by yourself, just admiring some of the games that are out there, or even going and finding a place to sit and just decompress. Taking care of your health can make a much more fun con experience. And then finally, happiness. You want to enjoy the games you're playing. You're there to have fun, ultimately, so enjoy the games you're playing. If you're looking to bring some super duper duper meta deck because you want to win, then maybe that's fun. But also, if you don't enjoy those games, that can make for a long, long day, especially if you're doing well. And that's a tough, problem to have, but it can be a good one sometimes. So enjoy the games you're playing. Make sure you take good breaks too. If you're just playing games 24/7 and every game you play goes to time, know that you're not going to get many breaks. And if that's something that you're prepared for, then that can be a good thing. But also, it can be a really, really tough thing. So take good breaks. And finally, pace yourself as best as possible. It is going to be the temptation to want to just run 24/7 at this con, whatever that is. But with GenCon right around the corner, there are 1,001 things to do, and you're going to want to just keep going, but pace yourself. Give yourself time to just be present with whatever you're playing, with whatever you're doing. If you're just walking around, if you're doing demos, if you're playing in a casual event or a competitive event, then pace yourself. Understand that the more that you give in energy and effort, the more you're going to have to refill at the end of the day or in a break or something like that. So pace yourself as best as possible. And with that comes pacing yourself with your opponents. If you are getting tilted because of the game just being so frustrating, take a good break. Drink some water, eat a snack. It can make all the difference. I've found that when I get frustrated, it becomes a problem for not just me, but my opponent too. I become shorter. Maybe I'm not rude, but I'm definitely not as talkative. And that can just be a really, really off-putting experience as you're playing games with other people. When I was playing at Adepticon earlier this year, they had their league system set up for Shatterpoint. And it was awesome. It was incredible. It was a lot of fun. But what I realized is that if I wanted the maximum number of tickets, I was going to have to play in all the events that I signed up for that day, which tended to be 4 rounds of Shatterpoint. So it was about an 8-hour event, 10-ish hours with a break. And then on top of that, I wanted to play 4 additional league games each day. That's impossible. You can't play all that. That is 8 games of Shatterpoint in a day, and that can take a long, long time. You got to pace yourself. Understand that min-maxing a con is a job, and that is not always the most fun thing to do. If you're there in order to have fun, maybe you do let a couple of things go by, and you don't let FOMO take over. So pace yourself. It's not going to be the easiest thing to do, but it will make for a better convention. I highly encourage you to do that. Now, because a big convention is such a fun and exciting place, it is nice to look at the meta. I think it's a great way to see that these huge 128-person tournaments are happening. Maybe this is a more national meta. Maybe this is, a worldwide meta. Maybe we've got people traveling across the world to come and be here at GenCon. So this meta is going to be a really interesting one. So here are my predictions for what we're going to see, whether that's top 8, top 16, whatever, maybe this is just the field. It's kind of amorphous, but I think these are some things that we need to be paying attention to with this meta, and then maybe post-GenCon reevaluating how all that looks. So this is the control page. I think that control really just exists in Villain right now. They have the better control options, and I think there are 2 different ways to go. So what I've got on the left is what I call the greedy control. These are the control decks that are beating other control decks and mid-range decks, but have a tougher time against really, really fast aggro because they tend to be so greedy. So like with Palpatine, if you're playing Palp double green, you often don't have tons of units that can deal direct damage from hand or something like that. Maybe you're playing some ambush units to try and make up for that. But if you lose control of the board, it can be difficult to recover that. But if you're playing against a slower deck, then you tend to be in control the whole game. And your threat of having Palpatine is scary. Or with either of these leaders, with Palpatine or Jabba, playing a yellow deck, a green-yellow deck, lets you ramp tons. And yellow has some really exciting inclusions now with Dryden Voss, specifically with Jabba, as well as sneak attack, letting you get in some of those huge ships for cheaper. I think that the green yellow like shell has gotten a lot better with this set. And so if you are looking to play one of these leaders that is, wanting to have that slow, grindy game, it can be a really tough game, but it can be really rewarding because it really does take skill to get further with these decks. They are mentally taxing, but they can be a lot of fun to figure out how to outsmart your opponent. So I think that both of these decks will do really, really well. I think Palpatine we'll see a fair few of, but Jabba's kind of my sleeper hit for this. I think that Jabba is going to have a deck or two. I admittedly have been playing Jabba a whole lot recently, so stay tuned for a deck tech for a Jabba yellow capture deck tech. What? Capture being good? Yeah, it's not as wild as you think. It is a really cool and fun archetype. I can totally see Jabba yellow doing well. Both of those decks can use blue. Green-blue is a good shell, as we were about to talk about, but I think that it's a lot tougher when you can't have ECL. The green-blue shell works better when the leader is blue and you're getting to use ECL because blue and green both have good options that want to be ambushed in. But it is possible. I think that Palpatine Blue got a lot more options. Having more officials on turn one with the scanning officer lets you have a lot more of a smooth curve in that early game. I think that Palpatine could see a lot more play in the blue shell because of that. But Jabba has also some interesting options, just playing a really slow game and using his the blue events to hold the board, and then using his capture to take down things that might be more difficult for your events. I think that's a fun way to play that. But both of those things are those greedy control decks. I think we'll see a fair few of them in the upper echelons of this tournament. And if had to put my money on anything, I think Palpatine is at least going to be in the top 4 of one of those events. I think he's an iconic character. People are going to be playing him. He's the face of those greedy control decks right now. I think we're going to see Palpatine do really well at least once. Then on the other side is this more control light decks. They're control decks, but they also have a game plan that tends to be a little bit more of the hold the board, keep the board, deal damage, not as much of this just play the long, I'm going to delete all your units and win based off of milling or something like that. Though that is certainly possible. We've seen that before. I do think that Kira is the prime way to use this. I got absolutely wrecked by Kira not too long ago just because I wasn't expecting how big that flip turn could be. So it threw me off guard when his board was prepared and mine was not. I took a bunch of damage off of that, and then boom, he just was able to hold the board from there. So I think Kira is really, really good. Krennic is also good. I think having the Restore 2 on a 2/7 body flipping on 5 is a big deal. So I think that Krennic will probably be the more common deck because we've played more with Krennic. But Kira feels like the new hotness that I think will do pretty well. So if I had to guess, a couple of these decks will be in the top 8. I don't know if they're going to get further than the top 8. If they do win something big, or if they're in the top 4 or something like that, I think it's because the player is really, really skilled. These decks feel like they lose to those hard control decks, like those greedy control decks that are just wanting to hold the board. Or not wanting to hold the board as much and are wanting to just take the board from your opponent with Palpatine Steal or Jabba's Capture and Dryden Flip, stuff like that. So I think that those decks might have more determined weaknesses, and they also can struggle against really fast aggro. So it feels like they eat up mid-range, but then, become a push in other places. So we'll see how that actually looks, but I think Control is doing really well right now. There's no Control deck in the meta that makes me think, oh my gosh, this is just the worst. But, they're fun decks for me to play. They're fun decks to play against because they're a fun little puzzle. I think they'll do well. They'll just be mentally taxing to play for a long, long time at one of these big events. I also think that there are a bunch of hero archetypes that can do really well. On the left, I've got this like hero resource cheat sort of deck, and on the right, I've got the like traditional aggro. I think Sabine is leagues better than Leia right now, even though I won a showdown with Leia. I think that Leia honestly just isn't as good anymore, even with Cassian. You can hold the board relatively okay, but as soon as you lose it, it's really tough to come back. So Leia is kind of out right now, but a skilled player who has played Leia a lot will know those ins and outs. And that was part of what I found so fun when I played Leia at the first showdown in the US. It was an interesting little back and forth of, okay, how do I need to trade when I do need to trade? And what ways can I use overwhelm? And at the time, it was just a fun way of trying to figure out this aggro puzzle by only using units and a little bit of for a cause. Whereas Sabine has more over-the-top damage, and because she comes out on 4, she's even faster. So I think Sabine is a really, really strong choice. She's obviously gotten better because of the Darksaber, and if your opponent doesn't have any removal for her when she first flips, or removal for the Darksaber, you can just absolutely run away with the game. She's hitting for 7 at that point. You're able to just keep her on board. She's a 6'8". Like, that is so scary. So I think Sabine is really, really strong. You'll see a lot of Sabine green. I also think Sabine yellow is good. I don't know if it's as good now, but I've seen people really fight for it, and I'm not saying that it's bad. I think that it's got a lot of legs. I think ECL, especially with Poe and Wrecker, is just so strong. It has a little bit more of a top end now, and it has a few different game plans because of Darksaber and Poe and Wrecker. So I think Sabine Green got way better this set, and it was already pretty good to begin with. So we'll see a fair bit of that. I don't expect it to win. I think that it has too many direct counters that can just eat it up. And for that reason, I don't think it'll ever win. But I expect to see it in top 4s and top 8s all throughout the week. Han is a deck that I expect a really good player to just take and run with. We've now seen yellow first set Han be really good. We've seen Han worth the risk, the new Han, be just absolutely nuts in green. So I think that these are decks that if people are comfortable playing them, and a lot of people are at this point, they will just absolutely run away with them. So my personal hope is that we'll see a fair bit of new Han, because I think he has some new and interesting gameplay like options with that extra damage. We've seen a lot of experimenting in blue and green with Han. With new Han, but then old Han as well has had new options with Han Yellow, and then Han Red and Han Green have both gotten updates. I think that these decks are really strong, and if your opponent isn't prepared for some of the combos they can pull off, like with old Han having Tech and DJ, or even just some of the crazy new combos that you get from having good units, like Casino Han honestly could show up just because there's new units that are really good, and U-Wing is a busted card. So like, I think that we'll see a lot of Han. I can totally see Han just running away with with one of these events. Whether that is new Han or old Han, that is yet to be seen. But I do think that Han will be all around. He's a fun and iconic character, so expect to see some Han Solo. I also think that there are going to be some villain aggro decks that are scary. Kylo Red has just been tearing up people who aren't ready for it. So prepare for Kylo Red. I think that Kylo Red is going to be a scary deck. It's got a lot of options. Being able to discard cards from your hand to buff up units turns all of your cards into this like free +2 attack sort of thing. And you can also do some weird dirtling with that, where you can wait until your opponent has to make an awkward decision. So it's totally worth it to check out this deck, figure out what all it does and how it works, because there's so many different ways to play it. And I think the Bosk is the best home for bounties, as you've seen on my channel before. I think Bosk has a lot of good options, and you can play really fast games with Bosk. So I expect to see a little bit of Bosk. He's the new hotness. Villain is really getting an aggressive swing in this set. There are more and more cards that work with villainy aggression, both as the red-black color combo, but also as like an aggressive deck in Villain. So I think that these two leaders are the two best ones, but I expect to see other leaders as well. Like, it is not fully out of the realm of possibility. And then on the other side of this slide, I have Ray and Cad Bane, which they fall into this like miscellaneous mid-range category where they do one thing really, really well. So like Ray does healing really, really well. Whether that is Red Ray, where she is, nuking your hand and is able to heal tons with her restore and the restore from other units, or if it's Mono Blue Ray that is playing that, mill game plan, that heal game plan, or maybe even Green Ray that is looking to just ramp into bigger units and then trade, her little units for your bigger units, just having a bunch of options available. I think that all of those things will show up. I can totally see Ray doing really well. I expect to see her on top tables. And Cad Bane falls into this weird category for me where if you're not playing Boba, but you are playing Yellow Villain, there's a reason. And Cad feels like he could be that reason. It feels like running Cad is worth it because you're able to deal that ping damage, which can really matter. He seems like he is a natural fit for Tarkin Town, but I've had a lot of success with him in Energy Conversion Lab just because it is great to be able to ambush extra units in, and having availability to green, especially like Maul, is just absolutely nuts. So I think that Cad Bane is a leader that we'll see a lot of. I don't know if anyone's really cracked him yet, so I'm excited to see if maybe GenCon has some sort of sleeper hit with Cad Bane. I expect some sort of this miscellaneous mid-range to end up in the top 16, top 8, at least once or twice. And then finally, Boba. What can I say about Boba that hasn't already been said? I personally don't think that Boba is a problem in the sense of needing balance adjustments. I do think that he is meta warping in a way that you need to be prepared for Boba. Like, you can't show up to an event and think you're not going to see Boba. And if you do, then it's because it's some sort of crazy casual play where there's no stakes at all. And Gen Con is not that. So I think that Boba Fett, he will, if he doesn't win one of these events, he will be in the top 4 at least once or twice. I think that he will be all over the top 8 and top 16. We're going to see a lot of yellow Boba. I think we'll see some blue Boba as well. It's one of those hard control decks, and I think it got way better this set with some new yellow options. I also think that red Boba could be showing up. It's this new flavor that's a little faster. It has some really cool options with like Ruthless Raider and Sneak Attack, some Triple Dark Raid stuff if you want to go that direction. And then green Boba, which was the original like meta bomb after Sabine Green was figured out at the beginning of set 1. I think that Boba Green is back with a vengeance. It is a scary, scary deck. There are a lot more options now. It can play a lot more scary big units and ramp to them even faster now. Boba Green feels like a menace. So all the different colors of Boba will show up. The question is Boba worth building a lot of your deck against? Do you start teching heavily against Boba specifically, or do you wait and kind of play the whole field and know that sometimes that Boba matchup becomes more of a 50-50 or a 40-60 towards Boba's favor, thinking that you can just win the rest of the board? And I don't know what the right answer is. I do think that you're going to have to play around Boba Fett's armor. So if you're in blue, you have 2 different options that I think are really good for Boba Fett to take him down on that turn that he flips. You can either play Rival's Fall if you're playing blue-green, and you can ramp faster than the Boba Yellow, or maybe even faster than the Boba Green. I also think that you can run Fell the Dragon. And I think that Fell the Dragon helps defeat some of those other scary units that Boba is throwing around. I think that Fell the Dragon is one of those cards that has a lot of, use, and it's worth paying attention to because Boba has big units. He likes playing things that are big, that are scary, and Fell the Dragon can take that down. I think Takedown is still a good card. It just doesn't directly deal with Boba Fett because he's 7 health. You have to have something to trade into that first. I think that it's still worth running. If you're not playing blue, I think you have to have a way to clear the rest of Boba's board when he first flips. or be faster than Boba. If you're playing Sabine Green, you just gotta sprint toward the finish line, because if Boba gets control of the board, it's really, really tough for him to lose it because he's having so much extra resource generation through his effect. I also think that there are some like crazy decks that might be able to take Boba by surprise, like the Tarkin Yellow deck. If the Boba player has not made their deck to work against that sort of Tarkin Yellow space deck, then honestly, I think that Tarkin Yellow can run away with it because the Boba player often doesn't have as much of an option. Maybe they're playing Cunning in Boba Yellow, or maybe they've got, out of aspect Cunning when they're playing any of the other Bobas. Maybe they've got removal in Boba Blue, but if they're not able to take down everything that you have in space, it can be really, really scary, really, really fast. So I think that Boba Fett is worth paying attention to, obviously, but I also think it's worth paying attention to on your side. How are you building your deck? What can you do to stop Boba? Another fun deck that I think has a weirdly good matchup into Boba is Gar Yellow. That blue-yellow combo is really cool, but it's also fun because you have so many shields. The deck's premise is that you're throwing shields on your units, and you're playing shielded units to begin with, so then they naturally get that +1 attack. And against Boba, that can be really good because you're keeping control of the board in a way that doesn't kill your own units. It becomes a lot tougher for Boba to trigger his ability when it takes a minimum of 2 hits to get rid of something. So anything with a lot of shields, maybe that means that Finn has some sort of weird good matchup into Boba. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, then maybe that's the meta sleeper that we need. There are other decks that I think are pretty good. Luke Green is exciting and Unplayable just did an awesome deck tech. I think that deck is really cool. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of it. Vader Green is also really interesting. I think that Vader Blue and Vader Green both are really fun options. Iden has fallen out of favor in some ways. I think that Kira and Krennic are both a little bit better, but I see a lot of people on the Iden train, and she's still really good. These are all like potential options for these big meta plays, but I really do think that we've got a really diverse meta, and I expect to see some sort of absolutely nuts deck end up in like the top 8, and everyone is so confused how this deck became the meta breaker that it is, and maybe it's just at the end of the day a really good player running that deck. But I think that big conventions are a lot of fun. I have always had a blast whether I'm working them or playing in them. And I think that these are going to be a really fun set of days as we learn more about the Set 2 meta and have our first really big official event. So comment below what you are most excited for about GenCon. And remember that this is going to be the last video where we are giving away a set of common and uncommon cards for Set 2 of Star Wars Unlimited. So comment below your favorite card in Star Wars Unlimited, and I will pick one of those and send it out in the coming days. So if you have any questions, maybe you think that some deck should be on that list that just absolutely was omitted, comment that below as well. And if you have any ways that you survive cons, then let me know. I would love to hear your ways to survive conventions. And if you're at Gen Con, leave a comment. Come say hey to me. I would love to meet y'all because this has been awesome getting to make content. I'm, really early into this journey, but it's been a blast. So if you see me at Gen Con, come say hey. I would love to meet y'all. But until then, I will catch y'all in the next video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and allows me to keep doing something that I really, really, really enjoy doing. And I'll see you next time. Bye.